GNASS. Two degenerates, both sides of the border. John Santina, Alex Lacasse. The Great North American Sports Show.
Hello, and welcome into another edition of GNASS, coming to you from the heart of New Hampshire's Seacoast. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Lacasse, joined as always by my friend north of the border in our friendly neighbors to the north. That'd be John Santina in Toronto, Ontario, as we record this show on the evening of May 16th as the Western Conference Finals in the NBA is set to get underway. But before that, first, John, your Maple Leafs were soundly dispatched from the NHL playoffs. We'll get into that, but why don't you tell our lovely audience what's coming up?
It was a tough week, man. I mean, it's like we said, they had a chance, but we knew that it was an inevitable outcome down 0-3. I mean, it's only happened 4 times in history. And I mean, let's be real, man. The Leafs are mentally weak and they couldn't pull it off. But we'll talk about it.
Small. You got out of the first round, right?
Hey, man. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a second because this week on GNAS, as you mentioned, Alex, the Leafs hit the links again. So we're going to talk about it. As you just said, is this progress? Does it feel different? What can we really take from the "we can" and "we will" era? And of course, what's next for this team? I mean, we'll talk about it here. Next, we hit the open court. And Alex, as you said, we're at the NBA conference finals. How did a 38-year-old LeBron James end up here? Was it all him or was it the Warriors' dysfunction? Of course, did KD choke, Alex? He joined your favorite choker in CP3. Was it just the vibes? And of course, I'm going to have to ask you, Alex, when we get to that, but only when we get to that, are you finally satisfied with a Jason Tatum closeout game? Let's get into it. All right, Alex, you mentioned it off the top of the show, man. The Maple Leafs, they're out. They went down 0-3. I mean, here, let's start it with it this way. You as an onlooker from this series, how did you feel just watching the Maple Leafs go down 0-3 against the 8th seeded Florida Panthers?
So I think, but first and foremost, I mean, we said this after the Panthers beat the Bruins. The Panthers were undersold as a playoff team. They clearly have the personnel to win playoff hockey games. Matthew Tkachuk I know that the NHL voters have already voted for but if you could include what we've seen so far in the playoffs, like from the playoffs, Matthew Tkachuk is by far and away the NHL MVP.
He should be running away with this Conn Smythe Trophy right now. I mean, it's all going to be dependent on if the Florida Panthers make the Stanley Cup final, but he should be running away with it. He's been the best player in the National Hockey League so far, and it's a big wake-up call for teams like the Oilers and Maple Leafs. This is the style that you need to play, guys.
Definitely. And so let's give the Florida Panthers some credit here because they knocked out the record-setting regular season team in the Bruins. They dispatch another Stanley Cup favorite potential in the Leafs. I mean, I know that there's a lot of history that's weighing down on those sweaters that we'll talk about. So the Panthers need a lot of credit here, but I think what we saw with Toronto.
Also, just really quickly before we get on Toronto, big shout out to Sergei Bobrovsky, 50 saves in the closeout game, man.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so obviously the Panthers coming off a President's Trophy last year. So I think their asses were pretty chapped in how they suffered the President's Trophy curse, and they were determined to do that to the Bruins. Now, I think for the Leafs, what we saw here was, I think this team got to the second round, and we talked about this. They were only going to respond one of two ways. Say, we're not this isn't what we came here to do, or we're just happy to be here. And unfortunately for the fans of the long-suffering fans of Toronto, their hockey team was just happy to be in the second round, and they did not show up to play. I think in the fan base, they were calling for the Panthers, and they wanted the Panthers to win that game.
Well, you got to remember, they were calling for the Panthers because it was either the fucking 8th seeded Panthers or the goddamn boogeyman in the Bruins.
Yes,
so you got to remember, there's some context here. But
the Bruins were ripe to get picked off, and unfortunately, the Leafs were just happy to be there. And maybe if the Leafs played a tough 7-game series here, back and forth, Toronto could come away with saying all right, the Panthers got hot. you can't go down 3-0 after you've spent 20 years in the wilderness trying to win a freaking playoff series, and then you immediately go down 3-0 in the most insurmountable lead in sports. That's a tough way to lose for sure.
And it's not even just the 3-0, Alex. It's the way that they went down 3-0. Like it'd be different if they lost 3 overtime games, to your point, battled it out, and they just happened. Like Sergei Bobrovsky stole 2 games that series. Let's be real. But the fact of the matter is he didn't steal all 4, and he wasn't nearly tested enough in all 4 games that the Panthers eventually won. And to your point, this series that they lost against the Florida Panthers, and I get that they normally lose in 7 and it's in the first round, was indicative of everything that's wrong with this core of players. Everything that you hear about this core is that they don't take this seriously enough. They don't start on time. They like in big games, they fold. They don't understand the gravity of a must-win situation. And you saw all of that in this series consistently. Like every time they took a lead into like at the end of the first period, the Panthers came out at the beginning of the second, and the Leafs could not stop the onslaught. It's been a consistent problem with this team, starting periods on time, starting games on time. And as soon as the Panthers dumped the puck deep, got their forecheck going, the Leafs simply couldn't handle it. They just didn't have the appropriate defense. Like Alex, I know we talked about it last show, but they did beef up their defense. What they need is an elite stopper, someone who's an elite defenseman who can go in there and take the puck away and stop these onslaughts. And the fact of the matter is the Leafs can't do it. And then they can't get the momentum back because they themselves trying to build up this bigger, tougher, sturdier roster. They don't have any speed. They don't have the ability to chip a puck deep and forecheck a team and grind them. And the fact of the matter is you have to have that versatility. Like you don't have to, that doesn't have to be your full identity. You don't have to do that every time. Like, or like the Panthers just winging pucks in out from their own zone. But the fact of the matter is you need versatility in your lineup. And the whole synopsis, so to speak, and summary of the we can and we will era, as it's being dubbed now, that's been the issue with this core. William Nylander, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, they all like to occupy the same areas of the ice. They're all similar players. They all like to hug the perimeter. And that was exactly the problem against the Florida Panthers. And we've seen it be the problem so many times before in these game sevens. And it's 2 things, Alex. The starting on time, and like I said, the style of play. It just never really meshed.
The Leafs definitely seem a little too top heavy with high end skill, and I think the Bruins suffered the same thing by relying on David Pasternak. And just real quickly, when you talk about the top 4 forwards, John, how do you cut up this blame pie for why the Leafs suffered another disappointing early playoff exit?
It's tough to say. Well, I mean, like, let me rephrase that. It's tough to say who in particular should shoulder the most blame from the core 4, because the reality is, like Alex, like I said, this was just such a microcosm of like them not showing up in big moments. Games 1, 2, and 3 against the Panthers were their first 3-game losing streak since fucking before Halloween. It's the first 3-game streak in the history of the core 4 that they've been held scoreless. Like, guys, like, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. And that is indicative that this chemistry, this makeup, I'm sure you'll go elsewhere and win. But together, you guys can't get it done. And Alex, at that point, like, who do I finger the blame on the most? I mean, I don't know if I could do that, because the fact of the matter is all 4 of them in that series, 1 goal between them.
Yeah, that's not going to get the job done.
That's not like the last 7 playoff games the Leafs were in, include like the 5 against Florida and the last 2 against Tampa Bay. They only scored 2 goals in regulation each time. That's not enough, guys. Like,
so ultimately, how much do you put on John Tavares? He's the captain of this team. He led Islanders teams that when they were winning playoff games, they seemed like they played that gritty, hard style of hockey that wins in the playoffs. And he just hasn't, not that he's that kind of player, but that culture really hasn't followed him to Toronto, it feels like.
No, it definitely hasn't. And what's funny is that I actually looked up his playoff stats because I heard that this was the 50th playoff game for the core group of this Maple Leafs team. And so I actually looked it up. John Tavares has pretty much just as many playoff games as the Maple Leafs, meaning he hasn't really made it that far either. So he's kind of always played this style too. And look, like I don't think they're bad players by any stretch. I think, like I said, I think it's an issue of versatility. It might not even be that they're top heavy. Like it might even be something like you change out someone like Nylander or Marner for a bigger power forward or someone who plays a different style of play, even if they're not a power forward. And that could really be but they need that they need essentially someone to drop that bomb on the makeup of the team because right now it's just not working. And you heard it in the exit interviews, man. Like Sheldon Keefe was basically holding back tears because he's like, I don't know what to do, man. And Kyle Dubas, you see why he's stressed out because he's done every possible thing except trade one of these core four players or core five now, if you include Morgan Riley as the fourth highest paid player on the team. But either way, it ultimately comes down to those guys. They did not produce enough. And at least like, if we want to move on to like where does the team go from here? Like, you know, to be honest, like it's got to be, I would think at bare minimum, one of them going for sure, probably two. Like if I'm the
Which,
ownership, sorry,
and
go
which
ahead.
two are those guys?
That's the question, isn't it? Because we're at a very interesting stage of the Maple Leafs right now. I mean, Austin Matthews' contract's coming up. He's already verbally said he wants to sign a new one before the season starts, but like you, even him, like people are talking about here, would you entertain trading him if you were to ask for like a max deal? And personally, I wouldn't, but like I get why the team might. If it
He
was up
feels
to
like he's the most important of the four.
dude, I've been a fan of this team for a long time. When Matt Sundin left, we literally had to tank for 12 years to get him. We're not getting rid of him.
Exactly.
like,
Like I feel
like
like so you take him off the table. Maybe Tavares with no one wants his contract. I mean, I'm sure
I, you could move Tavares at 11 mil. The problem is he has a no move clause. For me, the number one player that I have circled, if you're trying to drop a bomb in this core, is Mitch Marner. Like this guy just in all these big moments, he's out for a Sunday skate. He gives up the puck far too easily. He's a much bigger player than given credit for. Like you saw him run guys over in the playoffs. He's not afraid of like physicality. He just doesn't like it. And I also find in a lot of these big games, what ends up happening is he's indicative of the Maple Leaf style where he likes to overpass the puck because he's handling the puck on the outside. Austin's oftentimes like standing at the edge of the crease, like just trying to take enough cross checks to get a deflection on goal. And, for me, that's the first player I'd circle is Mitch Marner. If you can clear out his $10.9 million cap hit, there's a lot you can do as a roster. And I honestly think, and I don't, I if I was running the team, I would not do this, but I also think they will end up trading William Nylander. I just think it's too good of an opportunity in the sense that Nylander's coming off of a 40-goal year. His contract's going to expire after next season. Like you can trade him on a high and get the absolute peak value for him before you have to pay him like 10, $11 million a season. And I think, to be honest, Alex, like you're asking which one would you trade? I think it's those two. I think those
right.
two.
I think though. I think that I agree. I think those are probably the most logical moves.
It's
Maybe in some ways, some respects, the easiest trades to make. And
Marner's not easy, man. Because Marner makes as much money as Tavares, and so that's where the problem. And you got to remember, you're also negotiating from a point like a down point, like selling low.
right,
Like
yeah, maybe the rest of the league thinks
the
they're down on him as well. So, and you make the big in-season trades. You bring in Ryan O'Reilly. Do you want to see the Leafs continue with that? Maybe bring him back and go three centers deep, and then maybe rebuild the core, the winger core, if you will.
I would love to see them bring back Ryan O'Reilly, but I actually think if they bring him back, they should consider either him or John Tavares a winger and build a line out that way. Personally, like I think that's part of the thing with why I think both Nylander and Marner will be traded. And yes, I'm calling my shot right now. I think whoever's the GM is going to trade them. And the reason I think they're trading those two in particular is what they're going to look to do is bring in a play driving center and then like I said, they need a stopper. Not they don't need a power play guy. They need a stopper on defense. And that's what I think they're going to target is specifically those two positions. And then how you build out the wing, to your point, Alex, is it's an identity thing. Like they need to just shift from their traditional, I'm going to draft guys who are extremely skilled. And the reason they fall in the draft is because they're 5'9", 5'10", to getting more guys like the player they just brought in, who's their second round pick, Matthew Nyes. Matthew Nyes is a physical beast. He's 6'4", 220. He was arguably the Leafs' best player in the playoffs. And to me, like, I think that was a big learning experience for Kyle Dubas, seeing that player that he drafted in the second round just step in immediately and just be a force. And like, if it wasn't for that concussion, like, I do think Nyes makes an impact for the Leafs in the second round. I do think they lose the Panthers, but I think he makes an impact at least in the second round.
Sure. And so from here, so Kyle Dubas is out and new coach too, right?
Sorry, say that again.
So Kyle Dubas out, new coach, new coach in.
If it's up to me, I'm actually either keeping or promoting Kyle Dubas. I think he actually might be better suited to be a president than a GM, just because of his where he kills me is contract negotiations. Actually, it's not even trading or drafting. But to your point about the coach, if it was up to me, I think they fire Sheldon Keefe. If it's up to Kyle Dubas, I don't see him firing his best friend yet. But I personally think you have to fire Sheldon Keefe because he's got his lunch handed to him in every playoff series that they've had.
So then what kind of coach do you want for Toronto? Because they went the way that they lured Mike Babcock out of Detroit. They needed a real old school, Mike Babcock was thought of, as one of these brilliant hockey coaches. He kind of falls on his face in Toronto. So they ship him out. They bring in, a younger, less of a name in Keefe. Like what's the right profile of a coach?
I'd say that's a bit high. That's a bit too. You're thinking about it too much from the bird's eye view there with the Keefe thing, because you got to remember with Sheldon Keefe, at every stage of Kyle Dubas's career, Sheldon Keefe has been his guy. He's been his guy since junior B, moving up to the Sioux Greyhounds, then to the AHL and the NHL. And if you think about it logically, it's not that Sheldon Keefe's a bad coach, but he's a rookie head coach. And though I think Mike Babcock's style was not necessarily right for this core of the team, and one of the biggest problems with Mike Babcock was he didn't play the stars enough. I think they need a veteran coach who can identify, like, say, when Mitch Marner's not going well, you're going to sit. Like, because we saw it in game 3. Like, Mitch Marner was basically up for a pleasure skate, and they just kept going. Like, he's the most played forward on, like, he's the most ice time of any Leaf forward on the team. And, like, you can't keep going back to him if he's not feeling it that night. And I personally think that's why they need to make a change in the coaching department. But that one, I personally think if Kyle Dubas is back, they're not going to fire Sheldon Keefe. That's just my personal opinion. But if it was up to me, man, he would have been gone yesterday.
Yeah, I just feel like the way they lost that playoffs, going down 3-0, like
it's the way
that's a tough sell. And usually when something like that happens, heads roll.
Exactly. And not just that, like the biggest issue too, like to your point, it's like you go down 3, you struggle on the power play. You struggle to consistently. Teams will do things like just flip the puck into the zone, and he's yet to figure out some sort of system to alleviate the pressure from his defensemen. And yeah, I get that. I even made the point they need like a really, really elite stopper. But if Pittsburgh can figure out how to do it without Chris Letang, I'm sure he can figure out how to tell a guy how to chip the puck off the boards.
You'd like to hope. 2 quick hockey thoughts for you, John, before we take a break and shift over to basketball.
Sounds good.
First, what are your thoughts about Gary Bettman finally getting his wet dream with
the conference finals?
Yeah, with 4 Southern NHL franchise, 4-0 NHL franchises with next to 0 history playing for the Stanley Cup.
Man, TV ratings are going to be tough to come by this time of year, man. That's all I'm going to say. And especially with the goddamn Miami Heat in the fucking conference finals. And I don't know what these bastards were thinking, but I mean, they really got to hope one of these northern teams gets good soon, eh?
This is the wettest of Gary Bettman's dreams that he goes to bed
he's
thinking about every night.
This is like if he had to circle the teams on a board before the year, this is the 4 that would come out.
And lastly, we did call it here on GNASS. You heard it here first. Connor Bedard going to the Blackhawks in the draft lottery. Any thoughts on the bag job that was the Blackhawks getting this generational player?
Dude, first off, I hate Gary Bettman so much because we both came on right away and said he's going to the Blackhawks, and it's like the fact that the NHL is that obvious, like, guys, you're a second-rate fucking pro sports league. That is all.
This is Patrick Ewing going to the Knicks.
It's straight up like, dude, like between the reffing standard and like all this shit, like you're a second-rate pro sports league. But hey, man, it's appropriate because you got a team like the Maple Leafs that makes the most money. So, all right, buddy, we'll take a quick break and then we'll jump back on the court. And we are back, Alex. And now let's hit the court because we talked about, the gloomy Maple Leafs and the really just kind of reflecting on the fact that they said there would be major changes at the locker room cleanup. But now we move to a more exciting topic, the Western Conference. Well, the NBA conference finals. But let's start out west because we do have some questions about the Celtics, but save that for last, Alex. So we have the Nuggets and the Nuggets and the LA Lakers. Let's say the Denver Lakers. Oh, but that would have been bad. Alex, I mean, let's dive into it.
Both states heavily. Well, the Lakers came
Right?
from a state heavy populated with lakes.
Exactly. But how do we get here, Alex? Like how did Denver end up beating Phoenix?
So the long and short of it is, I think the Suns are their best players are all choky, or
I was waiting for that.
their mental their mental basket cases, or mental basket cases, I should say. In the case of DeAndre Ayton, but the Nuggets outscored the Suns, which coming into that series, I think there were questions if Ayton was engaged, could he slow down Jokic, and that just didn't happen. Excuse me. So I mean, you got to give all the credit to the Nuggets here in that the entire universe was pretty much on the Suns. They thought the Nuggets were an unworthy 1 seed, but I mean, Chris Paul gets hurt. DeAndre Ayton goes out with an injury, and they get blown out by, the game at one point was almost 40 points again in a closeout game at home in game 6. So maybe the Suns they didn't get on the same page with Durant, and maybe they could come back next year with a little bit of a vengeance. Chris Paul is going to be another year older. I bag a lot on the Celtics on this program, and the locker room, the chemistry issues that they've had, but there's something not right with the Suns mix, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking at DeAndre Ayton with a side eye this offseason.
I was gonna say, do you think it's the Suns mix though, or do you think it's possible that like there's just some contention with the coach? Because we saw like immediately after the Suns were eliminated, like, and there's even reports now it was Devin Booker and Kevin Durant possibly behind it as well. Like Monty Williams got canned as soon as the season was over, man, for them. And do you think it was possible that maybe it's just situation of the players need a new voice, or as I should say, new group therapist?
Well, in the NBA, the head coach is more a group psychologist than a tactician, and if you lose the locker room, you lose the locker room, and you're coaching to get fired in that sport.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, do you think it was like a Tony La Russa? I know it's a different sport, but a Tony La Russa type situation where he's completely lost like the clubhouse or the locker room in this case?
I don't think that. No, I think Monty Williams commanded a lot of respect in that locker room. I think he was. Don't quote me on this, but I think his wife and daughter were his wife and daughter were killed in a car accident when he was coaching the Suns.
Oh, geez.
And yeah, no, it's like so his wife and daughter were his wife was killed in a car accident. Maybe his daughter too. Oh God. Here respectfully on air. But yeah, his wife did perish in a car accident while he's been employed by the Suns, but certainly since he's been in the league as a coach. I'm not sure the exact year.
He was with Oklahoma City at the time.
Okay, so he was okay. See when that happened. But so I think he's one of the more respected coaches in the league as a basketball lifer, and so to see it go that sideways for the Suns, I think it's more than just the head coach. You know me, I think Chris Paul Chris Paul should be thankful every day that Ben Simmons is still in the league, because we'd be talking about Chris Paul as the most overrated player maybe this century. I swear to God, I can't do it with this guy. Like he's a good point guard. He's a good to great point guard. What do those guys win? Tell me, what do good to great point guards win?
I got one quick question, and then we'll move on to the Denver Nuggets. Alex, can you win with Kevin Durant as your number one option? If
He's certainly giving us every reason to say to answer that question in the negative, right? I like this seemed like all the pieces were supposed to fit together, right? For the Suns when they brought this ensemble together.
they even got a young
And
Devin Booker to help him age.
right, and that's the other thing. I think Devin Booker's overrated too. So I like it can't like the Sun people can't have it both ways. Like, was this a well constructed team with that's chock full of superstars that aren't choky, or are two of your three best players a little overrated? I think it's the latter. I like, and they're also. I think it's maybe they can have both, but they can't have one or the other. I guess. I you can draw the line where they are, but it's some combination of choky and overrated players. How choky are they versus how overrated they are? It's at 60-40, 70-30, and they can go either way. I just it's I there's this I think it happens in the NBA more than the other sports. There's always this, and the NFL a little bit too. There's always this rush by the hype machine in the media, the infotainment complex. Everything we need to see is the greatest thing that we're watching. No, not always. Like the NFL right now, you have two all-time quarterbacks, maybe. You definitely have one in Mahomes.
One thing I think we got to give credit to is Nikola Jokic's performance over these 6 games.
Oh
Man.
yeah,
He was
no, yeah, absolutely
fantastic.
all-timer.
Here,
Like
so
he's probably playing with hair across his ass because he thinks he should have been the first, third straight MVP since Larry Bird.
I was about to say that. Are we seeing his revenge tour here, and also him just like really putting like this could be that postseason where he's like, this is me, this is my legacy type thing. Are we seeing that play out live?
I mean, maybe we saw that in my colleague today brought up Dirk Nowitzki's the Mavericks run in 2011, where Dirk's like, nope, like I gotta get mine, and like, damn it, like everybody, like I'm gonna get it this year, and he led that Mavericks team through the playoffs, and they won that really unlikely championship when the entire world was on the Heat that year that they put the big three together. So I think that's possible if the Nuggets come out and they prove. And I guess we can switch gears and talk about the Lakers now. Like,
well, I was going to say that
if they make if they put the Lakers to bed here in 5 or 6 games and it's pretty convincing, then maybe Jokic could be on a kind of that Dirk Nowitzki legacy defining run.
Man, I don't know if because the Lakers are banking a lot of money on Anthony Davis stopping Nikola Jokic. Like, do you even see that happening, man? Like,
well, so that was what I was gonna say. I don't think the Suns weren't a good barometer for the Nuggets because the two were just good. They were just gonna play shootouts, right? And the Suns, we should have realized they were not a team that's going to dig in on defense. This Lakers team will. LeBron and Anthony Davis, like when they got to dig in, they'll dig in and they'll muck it up. They'll get in the paint and they'll get to the free throw line, as we know. So, but if the Nuggets just come out and they're clearly the better team, and we'll find out in a couple hours, at least, who's going to take, who's going to throw the first punch in this series. This would be quite an impressive postseason for Jokic, and yeah, it might be the revenge tour. But
one thing I will say though is you mentioned the proper barometer for the Nuggets. Are the Lakers even that barometer, man? Because think about it this way. Like, we're hearing reports already that Draymond Green, and there's like this discontent throughout the locker room all year. Like, to me, that reeks of dysfunction. And you know me, man, I'm always betting on dysfunction to fail. And I think I think the Warriors, we know it's a very, very
I mean, for once, the Lakers coming in as a 7 seed and they have a chance to go to the NBA Finals. They weren't the most dysfunctional hot mess. Like, usually the Lakers are either, when they're in the playoffs, they're either at the top or they're kind of middling and they all just want to go home and celebrate a fun off season in Los Angeles. I mean, who wouldn't? So, but you get the Grizzlies, and Ja Morant's going to be suspended for a long time to start next season.
Like seriously, just really quick, we'll pause on that. Ja Morant, just if you're really gonna do it, just put the fucking camera away.
No, a columnist for I should know the paper in Memphis, but I don't. But a columnist for the newspaper said he is the most important person in that city since Al Green.
Yeah.
And he might throw his career away.
Yep.
And that's a really bad proposition for the league that's done so much to bury this.
He's honestly like just proven to be just so like what's oblivious. Like
immature.
Exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. Like just totally oblivious to what he needs to do in terms of like where his stature is in that community as a role model. And that's why I was like, it's one of those things, like it sounds bad, but it's like, dude, just no cameras and like just please just try your best.
That's get off the internet. Yeah, easy for us to say.
Very easy for us to say, right?
Yeah, very easy for us to say on this program. But back to the Lakers, like. So, all right, you get a dysfunctional hot mess in the Memphis Grizzlies in round one. Ja was in and out of the lineup in that series with injuries. Then you get the Warriors, and
who are also a dysfunctional hot mess. Who were missing
been in
Andrew
a bad
Wiggins
way all season, and for a team with that championship pedigree to not get their act together for even like 2-3 weeks on the road over the course of the season to better position themselves, so they wouldn't have to. Play, grind out every game just to stay out of the play-in tournament. So I think the Warriors, they looked a lot like the 2011 Lakers when, we talk about Dirk's running it. Like that Lakers team was just done. Lamar Odom started to backslide into his troubles by that point. And that Lakers, they were dispatched in 5 games. I think that was the first round too. First or second round, either way. So yeah, the Warrior, like to answer your question, John, I don't think the Warriors were necessarily a good measuring stick for how we see this Lakers team. But if the Lakers come out and they go up to the altitude tonight and they punch the Nuggets in the nose, take game one, steal a game, maybe go back to LA, you got up 2-0, like
that's fair.
I'm gonna as a Celtics fan, I'm gonna be a little scared, not gonna lie.
I personally am rooting for a Celtics Lakers championship just because for my entertainment, my entertainment and your heart, my friend.
Yeah, that'll like there's a Lakers thing. Like
if that happens, you might be in Toronto for the final, so we can do a live watch.
Ooh, yeah, that would be quite brutal for it.
It's all good, buddy.
All of the GNASS viewership. Yeah, I'd get pretty beat up for that.
It's all good, man. Here, let's jump to the other coast, man. I think that's enough talk about the Lakers for now. So your Boston Celtics are headed on to the conference finals to play the Miami Heat. Alex, I got to ask you this first before we jump into the Celtics and everything that they deserve because they're one of the most talented teams in the NBA. I'm not going to knock. I'm going to give them credit because credit's due. Is this your dream matchup simply because it does not involve one Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo?
I mean, so yeah, you mentioned it. Like, credit to the Celtics. This was the floor for them this season. Like, but now, like you said, they didn't draw the Milwaukee Bucks, who it felt like they were on a collision course all season. And maybe, we want to talk about overrated. Maybe we overrated Giannis' supporting cast. And they might have to retool that team on the fly. Neither here nor there. The Miami Heat be here. They deserve. They
played hard. They deserve it. Playoff
they
Jimmy's
deserve
next
to be
level.
Here. Playoff Jimmy Butler is a real thing. That said,
yo, quick question too. Who Alex? Who'd you rather have? Bubble TJ Warren or playoff Jimmy Butler?
Playoff Jimmy Butler. Well, like the playoff Jimmy Butler was like born out of the bubble. So yeah, I mean, obviously, playoff Jimmy here. That said, Before the Celtics lost game 5 against Philadelphia, I took to this program and I called the Philadelphia 76ers a bunch of rats. And John, after that game 6,
Weren't
I
feeling
was
too
ready
hot,
to
were you?
I was ready to reluctantly give the Philadelphia 76ers some respect.
But Alex,
Then
Alex,
James
I
Harden and Embiid pulled a freaking no-show in game 7.
Alex, you're not giving credit where credit's due, man. Alex, this is the second question I have for you. Are you finally satisfied with a Jason Tatum closeout game?
Oh, absolutely. No, like Jason Tatum.
It only took 50 points.
Oh yeah, the most points ever scored in a game 7 in NBA history. But no, Jason Tatum, like games 4, 5, 6, obviously game 6. He didn't show up for the first half. No one showed up in game 5 for the Celtics. So, but for Tatum, to his credit, a lot of NBA superstars would have cratered in that game 6. You start 1 for 11 from the field or whatever the hell it was, 1 for 14. But he took big shots in that fourth quarter. It was I think it was, they had the stat. It was the fewest points scored by a player going into that fourth quarter, who then turned around and outscored the other team
Yeah.
by himself in the fourth quarter, which is it's a wild stat. And in his walk-off interview, he gave the humble brag or something. Well, humbly, one of the best players in the world. Like, if he needed that to get right, I'm fine with it. And he showed out in game 7. If now he's gotten the playoff jitters off his back, and the Celtics have an opportunity here. Like, if they dispatch the Heat like they should in 5 games, because again, I called the Philadelphia 76ers a bunch of rats, and they proved me right with their game 7 performance. The 76ers are more talented than the Miami Heat. If Tyler Hero was playing, then maybe I'd feel a little differently, but I don't think Jimmy Butler is enough to overcome this Celtics team. I just don't. That said, if the Celtics are going to play like the Celtics, like they're going to have at least 2 maddening losses this series where like the Miami Heat, everything they could to give you this basketball game because they didn't hit their shots or whatever, and you found a way to puke all over yourself and lose. Like, I'm fully expecting that, but the Celtics have a real opportunity. I mean, right now they're the odds-on favorite to win the championship. If they win these 2 games in Boston and it doesn't look like the Heat have a prayer, like maybe you can get the Celtics still a plus money, but that's going to drop to minus 200 by the start of game 3. So it's all in front of the Celtics right now, and it's championship or bust. That's where I'm at right now with this team.
That's fair. And I mean, they should be. I mean, last season they made the NBA championship. They're one of the most talented teams in like every season, year in and year out in the Eastern Conference. And I mean, Alex, call your shot right now. How many games does it take to beat the Miami Heat? I'm going to call it. I'm going to say Boston I'm going to go 6.
It should be 4 or 5, but it's going to be 6 games because I think Eric Spoelstra can coach the Heat to a victory in this series. And Eric Spoelstra, the tactician, can win the Heat a game against this Celtics team where they don't always put their best foot forward when they need to.
I also the situation that the Celtics are in right now with the Miami Heat. Not that the Miami Heat are a bad team. It reminds me a lot of way back when the Raptors were playing against LeBron James for like one of the first times in the playoffs. And Luis Scola had this famous quote because they lost in 6 games. And he kind of was, and they were like, oh, like the series is like 2-2. Like, how do you feeling about this? And he was kind of like, I'm going to be honest, it's 2-2, but I don't really feel like they're trying that hard. That's kind of how I feel like the Celtics are going to treat this until they get to the NBA championship. And fingers crossed, Alex, who you got? By the way, let's really quickly predict the West. Who you got in the West?
I think
I'm
The
going Lakers, but I'm not going to tell you how many games yet.
I think that we're going to see the Lakers play a little 8-on-5 basketball in a couple games this series. And now that we've gotten to this point, we're very close to a Celtics Lakers finals. The year Bill Russell dies. I think you'd be a fool to suggest anything other than Celtics Lakers for the championship.
I'm going Celtics in 6, Lakers in 7.
I'd say Lakers and Celtics in 6.
Ooh, good call. Good call, buddy. All right, Alex. I think that's enough of the news for today. What caught your eye on social media this week, my friend? Because sometimes social media moves so fast that we like to slow it down, catch what might be on that cesspool that is social media. So, Alex, what caught your eye this week?
Yeah, so keeping with the Celtics theme, our former championship winning head coach, Doc Rivers, thank you for the championship ring in 2008. I think he was the
And
right coach. He was the right coach at the right time for that bunch.
I believe he
However,
also yielded you some draft picks too.
yeah, well, no, that was the Pearson Garnett trade, but it tangentially related to that. Doc Rivers didn't want to stick around and coach the Celtics through a rebuild. He had done it once before with the Magic, and they showed him the door. And Doc Rivers, hey, the man won a championship, and he really he, based on his track record until that point, really deserved to never have to go through another rebuild. So he wanted to go coach Chris Paul in the Clippers. And
Hey, it was Blake Griffin's Clippers. Thank you.
my friend Thomas Carrieri here on Twitter at Thomas_Carrieri. I apologize in advance if I'm butchering the pronunciation of his name. I quote, Doc Rivers left the Celtics 10 years ago because he wanted no part in a rebuild. But ironically enough, the Celtics have gone further in the playoffs 6 out of those 10 years since he's left. And I think this kind of gets back to and then I didn't hate Doc Rivers for leaving. I think he might have, hindsight 20, if he gave him a true serum, maybe one of us stick that one out and have a chance to coach Brown and Tatum. But I never liked him going to the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, this is the guy who went into a press conference and said, oh, I'm a Celtic. Oh, so yeah, no, just go coach our biggest rival because you think you're gonna bring your championship pedigree to those, but that bunch of rats. So Doc Rivers got fired today, and I'm just glad to see him not coach the 76ers anymore, so I can kind of like him again.
It's okay. As long as they don't hire Nick Nurse, we're good. But
that'd be a little salt in the wound, but yeah. I feel like Nick Nurse is gonna want that Milwaukee job.
I can't imagine Nick Nurse wanting the Sixers because him and James Harden are not a match. But Alex, speaking of James Harden, that moves on to my social media highlight. Thank you to one Bill Simmons. And he asks us one particular question. If you had to name one NBA superstar in history, so throughout history, could be anyone who, one, consistently came up short in the playoffs, two, quit on multiple teams, three, consistently showed a lack of accountability, and four, got the most coaches or teammates either fired or traded, who's the first guy that comes to your mind, Alex?
I think there's only one name here, and I think Simmons was referencing this with his tweet. It's James Harden. I mean, what are we doing here?
Well, actually, one other guy came to mind for me, but granted, he has won a championship.
And he hit the shot. He hit the shot to win the championship.
For me, the first one was Kyrie, and then the second one was KD. Just because of but that's more recency bias than anything else, because both those guys have won. So
sure. So the reason why I say James Harden is, I would say his ability as a shot maker. I think he was the closest. Like, when he was in his prime, winning those MVPs and the scoring titles in Houston, like, he was the closest thing to Kobe Bryant I've seen in just his ability to make very, very difficult shots as a shooting guard.
Not even just that, just as like a one-man offense. Like, he could do it all, and like, honestly, he could have prolonged his career if he cared a little bit more about the fitness side of it, but not going to titty bars, but
right. And yeah, he liked the strip clubs, and before a game 7. He was out all night. One of those years in Houston. And how many coaches got fired when he was down there in Houston? You got Kevin McHale fired. You got Mike D'Antoni fired. They built the whole offense for a Mike D'Antoni style that they thought would benefit James Harden. It didn't work. They didn't have a guy that was over 6'7". Then they got Mike D'Antoni got fired that offseason. So it's James Harden. Maybe the other one, maybe Carmelo Anthony would be another one.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
And also, I guess maybe like Allen Iverson.
Less him, but like, yeah, I could see that. Another one that also came to mind a bit was Dwight Howard.
Yeah, Dwight Howard's a decent one. Yeah, you got Stan Van Gundy fired.
Yeah, man. But Dwight Howard was less of a coach killer. He was more of like a because he oftentimes didn't get his teammates traded. He got himself traded.
Yep.
Oh,
And like the Lakers brought him in thinking like, oh, we got Shaq 2.0. We're ready to go. We plucked the best center in the basketball from Orlando. And then his career is like, he's like, I'm just going to mail it in from this point forward.
yep. All right, Alex. I think that's enough though for this week on social media. Let's jump to everyone's favorite segment of the show. It's time to make some money. It's time for Degenerate's Corner.
Sometimes she goes, sometimes it does. She didn't go. That's the way she goes.
22 black, 22 black. Ass, son of a bitch.
Fucking way she goes, he said.
Oh no, why did I bet the company payroll? Oh, Gil's in a lot of trouble.
Can the boys beat the number? We'll find out on Degenerate's Corner.
That's the way she goes, buddy. Fucking way she goes.
All right, Alex. What did you have for your best bet this week? I'm guessing you're looking to the court because it's conference finals time.
Yes, probably by the time we get this posted, the the Nuggets and Lakers will have tipped off. So we're going to tomorrow night. Heat Celtics. Coming off an emotional series against Philly. The Heat want to turn this into a rock fight. I'm going to go the first half under, and we're going to go under 107.5. I think this is going to be two teams feeling each other out. I think the Heat are going to want to come in and bloody the Celtics' nose. So maybe it's kind of a little bit of a slog. Maybe some team figures it out in the second half. So let's just get under in the first half. Maybe like 53-48 first half, one way or another. And yeah, we'll get under that number. John, where are you going for your best bet?
I'm going to the ice, man. I'm hitting the Florida Panthers on the money line versus Carolina in game 1. Florida is on fire on the road. Now, I don't think they're going to win this series, but I do think they take game 1 on the road. They've been playing very, very well. They play a style of play that's very hard for, teams like Carolina who prefer puck possession to succeed. And Bobrovsky's red hot right now. So you expect a lot of flip passes, a lot of rush play. And I think Florida takes advantage of that in game 1 before Carolina makes the adjustments and settles down in game 2. But get Florida on the money line for plus 120, everyone. Alex, what is your, I guess it'd be parlay or long shot this week, eh?
I have a confession, John. The Panthers 2 closeout victories, I've taken them on the money line, and that's been a little profitable for me.
I don't blame you for that at all. I bet against the Maple Leafs all the time.
See, I have a thing with that. I don't bet against the Celtics.
My biggest
Red Sox. I'll do that here and there. Granted,
Alex, my biggest monetary win this past season in the NHL was betting on Arizona to win in Toronto.
I remember that. Yes, I think you threw out that bet on this show.
Probably.
John, we're getting to the time of year when there aren't a lot of sports I can stack up for a parlay. So we're going to do a little bit of load management. And I'm going to put our loyal listeners and viewers on notice. I might be on load management till the summer league starts. That'd be really scraping the barrel. Maybe if there's I'll keep an eye out for like a nice, hopefully a nice payout. Maybe like a Celtics exact NBA finals. We'll see where, but let's get there first. And But so a little load management for old Alex on the long shot department. John, where are you going with your best? Excuse me, your long shot or parlay?
So I'm gonna go with the parlay. So I'm gonna do Celtics money line game one, Manchester City on the money line versus Real Madrid in the second leg of the Champions League semifinal. Man City needs to win to proceed or to advance. Excuse me. I believe Madrid currently holds a 1-0 or 2-1 or 1 goal advantage. Excuse me on aggregate. I'm going to take the Nuggets on the money line. Actually, I think Jokic is going to win game one, even though I think the Lakers win a slog of a long series. And finally, we're going to head to the Western Conference Finals on the ice. That is. And I'm going to take the Stars on the money line against the Vegas Golden Knights. I think Vegas is a good team, but the Stars are just such a complete team, and Jake Ottinger always manages to steal games. So I think that one's going to be, I think he's going to take game one for sure, maybe two, or excuse me, maybe another one later in the series is in steal 2 games total. That parlay, that 4-leg multi-sport parlay gives you plus 510. So just a little juicy number there for the viewers, but not as juicy as our normal parlays, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're scraping the barrel this time of year.
See what we can do.
Because we're not going to bet on baseball.
We're not going to bet on baseball. The one bet I almost took actually, because people in Toronto have been getting a little pumped up here, is that the Raptors are in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. So a lot of people are potentially taking those odds. I don't like it though. I don't think the Raptors.
John, we just talked about how the NHL engineered their draft lottery to put a once in a generation player in Chicago, which is a big market in that sport. As much as Toronto is a big market, they're not putting the 7'4" French unicorn in Canada. I'm sorry, my friend.
Oh, I knew that going in. They went down that road once before putting Andrea Bargnani there, and it did not work out so well. So I think they want to make sure he's going to probably go to a franchise that properly grooms him. And personally, like I think even though it may not be the best spot for him, I think the San Antonio Spurs and getting to work with Greg Popovich would be amazing for his career. But that's
I do not want to reward bad behavior on the part of the Spurs and getting another.
Alex, we only reward bad behavior in sports in North America. We don't have relegation. We give the worst teams the top draft picks, man. That's how we do things.
I know, but still,
I'd love. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. Speaking of the draft lottery tonight, should we just spin the wheel for fun one more time, even though maybe the order will be decided?
Why, yes, we should. Give me 1 second. We are pulling up. Here it is, our draft lottery, folks. As always, we have the Detroit Pistons with the top odds, and here we go. Houston again. Them titty bars getting wild.
That's actually bad for the Celtics because I think there's all these different trade maturations where as long as the Spurs pick above Houston, the Celtics get like the 32nd pick. So they're still second round pick, but yeah, second round picks are getting more valuable these days. And
yeah, if you have a good scouting staff, man, you turn them into a nice rotation piece.
Oh yeah. So but if Houston picks above San Antonio, I think we fall like we get another pick from the Pacers for, I don't want to explain this. I don't think I understand how the Celtics ended up with these picks. But so difference by a couple spots in the second round, but that could might be worth something.
All right, Alex, any closing thoughts for our listeners, our viewers, our subscribers? Of course, we'd like to, as always, humbly thank you guys for tuning in the show and consuming the show however you get it. Alex, any thoughts for them?
Let's just make Bill Russell proud. I'm sure he's taking a great interest in the Celtics fair the rest of this postseason, and what better way to pay tribute to probably the greatest winner in North American sports, in my humble opinion, by winning banner 18. So first step starts Wednesday night.